واول حكم عندنا حكم خواجه. احنا قلنا برضو ان انتوا بتحبوا الحكام الاجانب، والكلام اللي حضراتكم هتشوفوه دلوقتي ده لخبير تعليم، بس مش اي خبير، ده واحد مسؤول عن جهة علمية تعليمية عالمية مشهود لها بالكفاءة. خبطنا عليهم كده علشان يبقوا شركائنا في التطوير، وناخد منهم كده خبرتهم ونمصرها ونحط التاتش بتاعنا بقى، وخبراءنا يبقوا كده ايد في ايد معاهم عشان نشوف ايه اللي ينفع اولادنا والطبيعة المصرية. بكلمكم عن مؤسسة ديسكفري العالمية اللي بعد 4 سنوات من التطوير سألنا مارتي كيرل المدير الأكاديمي والتنفيذي العالمي لمؤسسة ديسكفري التعليمية الاستشارية شايفيننا ازاي؟ وكانت دي هي الإجابة.
Hi, I'm Marty Creel. I'm the Chief Academic Officer and Executive Director for Global Academic Consulting at Discovery Education. We've been working with the Ministry of Education and Technical Education for about 5 or 6 years, starting back with the EKB. But our most exciting project has been starting in 2018 with the development of the new Education 2.0 initiatives. And our first effort in 2018 was looking at all the international standards around the world to get a sense of how Egypt compared to those other standards in the curriculum and the instruction and the assessment. So with the direction of Dr. Tarek, we did an analysis comparing Egypt's standards and books and materials to many other nations in the world. And so it was that vision that Dr. Tarek set to raise the materials of instruction, the books, up to the level of other nations that we began back in 2018. We helped develop with the ministry and the CCIMD the books that are now in Egypt. The great thing about Dr. Tarek's vision is all the books are owned by Egypt. They're not owned by the publisher, not owned by us. They are things that we helped develop, but the people of Egypt own these impressive new books. The basic idea is that students in Egypt are as smart as students all over the world, but they cannot get to the level that other students are at unless they have instruction and materials that are at the same level as those students in every other country. And you know, over the last 15 or 20 years, almost all countries in the world have leveled up. They've made their instruction more challenging. In fact, where I grew up in the United States, the curriculum is much more difficult than when I was a kid and would be more challenging for me. And so likewise, what we've been able to do is help Egypt bring in that new level of challenging instruction. And so we really feel like that strategy will help Egypt tremendously. I've been in instruction and in education for more than 30 years, and one of my first students was an Egyptian student whose parents had sent him to the United States for high school. And he had a very hard time when he first came over because he found that he wasn't given the same level of instruction when he was in elementary school and middle school as the kids who were in the United States. And it was a very difficult adjustment for him. I got to know him really well, and I helped him develop the expertise that he needed, and he turned out to be one of my brightest students. In fact, he won what's called the Presidential's National Merit Finalist Award because he was an incredibly bright student. But if students are not given the materials and the challenge that we know they can reach to, they will never get there. And so that strategy, the basic strategy, is leveling up the expectations. The other part is really how do we help teachers and parents with that strategy? And so how do we help them become great instructors too? And part of that strategy has been providing teacher materials and professional learning services, which is what we do as well. And another part has been working with Madrestana on making sure that parents and teachers and students can see how this type of instruction looks on television, so they can see in the broadcasts that yes, teachers can teach in this way and it can be great and engaging for students. And what that does when students see an inviting teacher, a teacher who is really inspiring, it opens their mind and helps them become learners for life. And we think that's just going to have a great outcome for Egypt. It may be a struggle right now, but it's going to be a fantastic outcome for the nation of Egypt. You know, there's many things important about Education 2.0, but perhaps the most important is that it focuses on the whole society, beginning with Dr. Tarek's vision of EKB, the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, is the idea that the entire society becomes a learning society, which will transform the entire way Egypt will approach and the way it thinks of itself. That idea of learning is something that will allow a child to think about how they will grow their entire lives. Instead of thinking that I'm just going to be one thing, it'll allow them as they grow to try new things and to always learn. That approach underpins all of Education 2.0. So when we think about how we do that, what does that mean in the reality of the classroom? That means that students need to do more than just memorize. They need to really think about what they're learning, and they need to be able to apply it to other circumstances. So while it's very important that I learn my numbers and I learn my Arabic, I have to be able to use that to acquire more knowledge because the world is just constantly changing. And so the idea of a learning society is, how do we make the world better through education? Sure, when we look at Education 2.0 curriculum, the new curriculum, it is as good as education curriculum that is in other nations like the United States, Europe, and Asia. It's based on the standards. They have various names, but it's based on those international benchmark standards that have helped nations score very well on specific exams. These exams are called the TIMSS or the PISA, and those are the exams that the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, those are the exams that show that nations that have become learning societies do very well on. And the idea is that you have to be able to apply what you learn. You have to be able to think about what you learn, not just read it and then memorize it and then forget it. And so that idea that getting Egypt to that point, that's what Education 2.0 is all about. So when you now compare the fourth grade curriculum in science, social studies, Arabic, math, all of that is now at a much higher level because it is at those international levels. Discovery Education is a global company. We began with the Discovery Channel. I think some of you may know the Discovery Channel, and it's based on the idea that how do you engage people in learning through video? We took that idea about 20 years ago and we started taking the video and letting teachers use it so that it would engage the student and then make them want to learn, so that if they had to read something difficult, you could begin with a video to get them excited about it, and then they could read the difficult passage and then answer the questions or talk about them or write about them. And so Discovery Education started about 20 years ago, really looking at how that was working in the United States, then how is it working in the United Kingdom, then how is it working in Latin America, and we began working in Latin America. We also began in international schools in Europe and Asia, and of course across the MENA region. So that the focus that we've taken is, how do you make sure that any nation that we work with is getting the best advice in terms of what other students are doing elsewhere in the world? And so our whole approach has been, let's compare to international standards, but make it Egyptian. So that when we built books, it was with the CCIMD, and they always made sure that what we developed was Egyptian. So it compares to the international, but it reaches the Egyptian heart and culture as well.